Fine 999 here, and we're going to do a little smaller set today. I'm also aka Matthew Roybal. I've been doing these videos for a while and trying to think of ways to add some stuff to them, maybe some information that would be cool. I printed out some stuff this time, and the set that I'm going to do is the Batman227 set. It is a smaller set within the hobby, within the niche, but it's very interesting because it also has some variation, and it is one of those earlier sets that people started building, and it's got some very difficult books to find, particularly two that are neat, and most people have probably never even seen them. So, Batman227, what can you say about this? This is an amazing Bronze Age Batman book. It was published by DC, of course, in December 1970. Classic Neal Adams cover, interior art by Dick Giordano, and written by Denny O'Neil. I think this is one of the first stories written by Denny O'Neil. I'm not sure on that, but I think it's definitely early in his Batman writing time. And this issue is a classic issue for a couple reasons. It's just an amazing cover that Neal Adams did. It's got Batman rising above the Gothos mansion. You've got the Coven Master chasing Daphne, which is Alfred's niece. And this cover is actually a cover swipe. It's a cover swipe of Detective Comics issue 31. And that issue was drawn by Bob Kane, who was the creator of Batman. And so that's a classic Golden Age cover. Neal Adams repurposed it, redid it in his style, and it's just, I don't know, man. I think of all the Bronze Age bats, this has got to be one of the top covers.
Michal, is that how you say it?
Michal.
Hey, Michal. Hey, hello, Matt.
What's up, Michal? Hola, ¿cómo está? Yeah, so for me, when I go into the Bronze Age and the Batman run, and particularly the Neal Adams covers, this is the one I always tend to just come back to, just because I feel that it's got a kind of a symbolicness to the Batman story, to the Batman legend. This way that he's kind of in the shadows, partly obscuring the moon, and he's above the mansion. He's bigger than life. There's just something so cool about this.
Jim,
I mean,
Wasi, hi, Big Matthew Roybal, Anthony
Aguirre.
Okay. Stéphane, bonjour du Québec.
Bonjour, Québécois. Anthony, hola. And who else?
Jim.
Jim, what's up? I don't know how to say hi in Portuguese, Jim. So Batman's rising out of the fog as well. You've got these two vicious dogs. Daphne, Alfred's niece, of course. It looks like she's going to get caught by the Coven Master. And it's just a classic book. Classic book. And I think that's why we tend in the foreign niche, when we're building sets, to gravitate towards classic covers and covers that have a lot of emotional heft. And I would say that this book definitely does. Let me show some interior panels. So the synopsis of the story is Alfred gets a letter from Daphne, his niece, that she's teaching kids at Gothos Mansion. Gothos Mansion, of course, is this mansion that's rising, that Batman's rising above. And she goes to teach some children, and she sends Alfred a letter saying something like she's scared or there's some weird things going on or whatnot. So Batman decides to go check it out. On his way there, he runs into some thugs, the Coven Master's thugs, and Dick Giordano does a really good job. A lot of people almost think it's almost Neal Adams-like, his interior inks, and he just he makes quick work of them. But there's a good example of some of the interiors. Just classic Batman, classic panels. And so what ends up happening is Batman goes in there, he finds Daphne, they end up having a conversation somehow, I believe, and somewhere inside there, Batman is captured by the Coven Master, And the Coven Master traps him. Basically, he's like hanging, and Batman has to escape. And the Coven Master, what he plans to do is kill Daphne and resurrect the demon Balak from hell. Now, this is very, Lovecraftian, this whole idea of resurrecting a demon, and a Batman can't let that happen, of course. But there's also some stuff in there where on the date that I think is the date that Daphne was born, a decade prior, there was a maiden that was there at Gotham's mansion, and somehow Batman either meets her or finds her. And so there's a spirit there, there's a ghost there of this maiden. And the ghost looks exactly like Daphne, Alfred's niece. Anyway, so Batman escapes. Here's a cool close-up of a panel of the Coven Master. He's about to kill Daphne. And, awesome art, really cool. And so Batman saves Daphne from
Colin.
being... What's up?
Colin, tuned in to see you again.
What's up, Colin?
Robert Triggs, live at 6 o'clock. Your news update for the FCC community. I give you Matthew Roybal.
Thank you, Robert. Robert's a cool guy. Thank you, Colin, for coming in and checking in again. So, Batman saves Daphne, but it's been a long time since I've actually read the interior, but somehow in that process, Batman falls in love with the ghost that looks like Daphne, right? Which is a little weird if you think about it, because Daphne is Alfred's niece. So if the ghost that lived a decade prior, or how many decades prior, looks exactly like her, that's weird, right? Anyway, I don't know. Very weird. So at the end, Batman comes and he tries to stop the ghost of Gotham's mansion, who looks just like Daphne, and he tries to stop her. And she basically tells him, I'm a ghost, see you later. But here, she leaves him a parting gift of her picture. And check out Batman. He's very sad about that. He looks to be crying in his hands. So another interesting thing about this issue, I think, I had heard this, I don't know how true it is, but I believe this might be one of the first times a panel actually shows Batman crying like this, where he's flat out bawling. Again, really good interior artwork by Dick. Denny O'Neil, one of the first Bat stories I think that he wrote, and he's a famous Bat writer, and it's just a cool story. Classic Batman. Classic, being that I consider myself kind of a closet goth, this is Batman at his darkest and coolest, and, as far as the Bronze Age, I love it, man. It's awesome. So, there you have it. There's the synopsis. Classic Batman227, based... cover swiped of Detective Comics issue 31. Great, great book. But, again, American, easy to find. All you need is money, and you can have as many Batman 227s as you want. The problem is finding the others and building a set. This is the Mexican Navarro Batman 227. It's called Batman El Hombre Murcielago. I don't know how to say that. Murcielago. Basically means the Batman in Spanish. El Genio de la Mansión Embrujada. I don't know if that necessarily means Gothos, Embrujada, but it's kind of like that. This is the Navarro 227. The artwork is basically exactly the same. It's maybe, the color strike is maybe not so fine. If you compare the two, if you compare the American and the Mexican one definitely looks rougher. But a lot of that has to deal with the fact that the Mexican Navarro 227, which is actually numbered 591 and was published in July 1971, had some quality issues. Navarro had some real quality issues with the Mexican 227. Specifically, the quality issues had to deal with print transfer, and the ink just did not stay. They had some ink permanence problems. On the back, I think these books, when they came off the press, were stacked very wet, so a lot of ink transferred, as well as that the ink just didn't stick very well. So a lot of the fine details are really tough.
Bring it closer. You can see.
A lot of the details, a lot of the finer details, just are real rough with the Mexican Navarro. I'm not sure if during that time of the Batman run, most issues, because I've seen other Batman books by Navarro that looked really nice. For whatever reason, I've never seen a 227 not have these quality problems. Great book, hard to find. Usually when you find them, they're rough. These are hard to find in any kind of decent condition. At one point in time, an interesting note about this book is at one point in time, I pulled 3 out of Uruguay in South America. This was way back before anyone was, this was early on in the foreign comic collecting stuff. And I pulled 3 out of there. That hasn't happened since. I don't know anyone that owns more than maybe 1 or 2.
Jim says, hello USA, put a Facebook link to Facebook/Brazil Comic Hunter.
Oh yeah, my buddy Jim Wazzy. Whenever you're looking for Brazilian books, he's the guy to go to. Great, trustworthy, honest. The guy's awesome. In fact, I'm going to show you a book he helped me land here in just a second. So, Mexican 227, El Hombre Murciélago, published by Navarro, issue 591 in July 1971. Mexican 227. Okay. So, this one is a beauty. Speaking of Jim, this is a Brazilian book Jim helped me land. I had another one that was in a lower grade. This one is much nicer. We got this off Mercado Livre, which is the Brazilian eBay. And the Brazilian 227, as far as the foreign niche goes, I've talked about the e-balls a lot, about how they're some of my favorite South American books. One of the reasons really has to do with the coloring, but I'll get to that in a second. Let me give you the title here. This is the Brazilian 227. This is Batman B, first series. This is issue 40, published by e-ball in October 1971. So all these 1971 books were published a year later. Now, all the interiors are black and white, and the cover is recolored. How do we know this? We know this because it's got this pastel look to it. It's a very pastel look, very different from any of the other foreigns. We do not think that e-ball was given the color separations for a majority of their comics. We've seen this, like, as you remember, on the 129. We saw this on the Spider-Man 129 e-ball. We see it on a bunch of other e-balls. The coloring was redone. And interestingly enough, if you were to take the American book and compare, you would see some differences. Now, these differences, can you see that? Have to deal with the fog. Notice on the Brazilian, there's a lot more fog. Also, you'll notice that as far as the bats, it looks like there's some different bats. I can't really tell, but I think the bats got done a little bit differently along with the fog. I also think that the Batman, some of these interior parts might have been redone a little bit, but it's definitely different. And to be honest, the Brazilian pastel coloring is just absolutely stunning. I love it. It is cool. And like you see with most foreigns, notice the Americans got all kinds of cluttering. It's got little Robin and all kinds of cluttering. Let's clutter up the classic artwork. The Brazilian doesn't do that. And you see that with foreigns. Look how it's just clean. Yes, you have the O Dimano de Marcel de Gathos. It's Portuguese for the the story, Gathos Mansion story. Yeah, it has its pages, but besides that, and its bat e-ball tag up there, it's just clean. This is just a clean book. And e-balls, finding them in any kind of good condition, I've said this before, is extremely tough. This is a badass book.
Tony says, excellent Brazilian condition.
Yeah, I got this one recently, and I'm stoked with it. That's fine. It'll go.
Okay.
Yeah. So I hope you guys dig this one. This one also is an anthology series. It has a few other stories in it. I forgot to mention too, on the American, there's a Robin story. Shows you how much I give a shit about Robin. I don't. But anyway, yeah. So
Jim says, awesome cover, Matt.
Jim Wazzy?
Yeah.
Thanks, Jim. Thanks, Tony. And I'm going to get to Tony here in a little bit. We're going to talk about collectors within the niche that collect this set. I'm going to get to that in a bit. Anyway, anthology. Brazilian 227, Batman B, first series, issue 40, published by Ebal, October 1971. Badass book. Badass book. Love the Brazilian stuff. If you're going to build a 227 set, gotta have that one. You gotta have that one. And let me show you some of the interiors. Remember the classic artwork from the American? There's the Brazilian interior. In fact, see, I always forget. I don't have all my stuff together. So this is the Brazilian in Portuguese, all black and white. I like the way the artwork turned out. And I forgot to tell you that I also had the interior of the Mexican. Remember the Mexican one? I was talking about the quality issues. Look at the color there in the Mexican Navarro. You see how it's not sticking? There's that issue of permanence. The ink just wasn't sticking. I mean, compare that. Compare the Mexican with the American. You see those quality issues? Navarro had some serious problems. I don't know if it was the paper, but their ink is just not sticking for whatever reason. Here is the classic end piece. You see the Mexican. This is the Mexican. Fiend. Again, there's Batman crying. Yeah, I printed that stuff out and I forgot to show you the Mexican stuff. I need to practice at this. And here is, again, the Fiend. Theme, I guess in Portuguese it's theme instead of fiend like Mexican, but there you see the portrait of Daphne. That isn't Daphne, that's the spirit that looks just like Daphne. So what's Batman going to do? Is he going to go back and tell Alfred, hey, I've got the hots for your niece, man. She's fine. Looks just like her. That's kind of weird, I think. Okay, moving on. Now, this is an interesting one. This is actually a Brazilian 227 as well. Notice it's in digest size. This is Super Amigos number 18. It was published by Abril. And this is a book that was published in the 80s. I believe it was 1986. And what makes this one so interesting is they took the classic Adams artwork, but if you notice, they removed the Coven Master, they removed Daphne, and they put in Robin and some random thug. This story does not contain any of the 227 interiors. It has some random Batman stories. Right off the bat, I can't remember what they are, but...
Anthony says I have this one.
Nice. Anthony Aguirre. Yeah, this is a cool one to have. You know, if you're building the set, this is one of the more interesting ones, not only for its size, but because you see what the Brazilian publisher did to the artwork. They removed it. When I showed Neil Adams this, he kind of chuckled and laughed and talked about how this happens a lot and they don't respect his artwork and all that stuff. But with this book is kind of a... Let me talk a little bit about why the niche is complicated for Americans and people that aren't used to foreign editions and foreign publishers doing whatever the hell they want. This is a complicated book. It can't be considered a Batman 227 issue because it doesn't have the guts, but it does have the artwork, sorta, right? Also, it's got 3 different stories in here that I don't even think relate to they don't relate to the 227 story. And the artwork was basically altered. Most likely the publisher did it and didn't care. It probably didn't let DC know. As far as I know, DC would not... is the cat in our room? That door should have been closed. He's digging around in my comic boxes. Damn it.
Anybody want a cat?
Get out of here.
I offered the cat. Nobody
You
wants
should
him.
have closed that door, man.
It's not my fault.
Hey,
You put this on me.
this is your fault. You should have handled that wife. Yeah, he likes to stick his claws into everything, and I've got all my comic boxes open. He's going to
Easy
claw
there,
my
buddy.
stuff.
Getting all worked up.
I regret getting that stupid cat. Anyway,
His name is Sancho. He's cool.
Super Amigos, back to why the niche can be complicated.
Oh, sorry.
It's you know, books can't be easily classified, basically. And, you know, there's some people that would say this is not a 227 foreign. I personally think it belongs in the 227 set. I think it's a book that deserves respect. but a lot of people would consider it trash. Not me though, because I love the foreign niche. Second Brazilian 227. I'm still going to call it a second Brazilian 227, even though it doesn't have the guts, even though the cover is altered. Super Amigos number 18, published by Abril in October 1986. If you're building a 227 set, this is a relatively easy book to get. You can find them. Jim could find you one very easily on Mercado Livre Brazil. So, not really a hard book to find, but worthy of the set, I believe. Okay. Now that I'm calming down from the cat.
Your face is returning to our normal color.
It just pissed me off.
Look,
Okay.
this is the real Matt, guys. This is the one that I get to deal with. You see? He's all sunshine and roses for you guys.
It's been stressful lately. I don't know if my blood pressure, I've been having issues with it. Okay. This is the French Batman 227, Superman at Batman and Robin 43. This is published by Sage. This was published in July of 1972, so this is a little later. This is 2 years later. This also is an anthology series. It has the Gothos story, but it also has, I think, like a Green Lantern story and some other stories. Pretty cool book. Some pretty serious colorization differences. I don't know if you can see it, but you can see that it's got a very bluish tint to it. Also, notice Batman, how rough he is. I think this artwork was redone very crudely because somehow when they ended up with this artwork, they might have missed the Batman part of it. I don't know. But, you'll notice even the fog. It's just, compare it with the American and you'll see how rough Batman and the fog and all that other stuff is.
Glare. Hold on.
Oh,
No, you're fine.
not better?
That, the American.
See
There
how
you go.
different the French is? But I don't mind that. I don't mind when it gets rougher. I think it adds some stuff. I actually really like the blue tint. You'll notice also that on the artwork on the bottom here, the mansions always change colors depending on foreign edition, but there's no highlights. That's another thing that you'll notice. Notice in the American on the girl and the Coven Master, there's some highlights there. Notice on the French there is not. So it's just cruder artwork, but I like it. I like the yellow banner on the top. Superman at Batman 43, Nouvelle Série. Stefan would have to tell me if in French that means new series or second series. I'm not sure. And it's Sage Edition. I like that it says Paris on the bottom. This is a cool issue. Cool issue. Again, no call outs on the story. Just the artwork. Different than the American again. And I think in French, Stefan is going to laugh at me, but it's called Les Spectres de la Maison Gothos. Did I say that right, Stefan? Let's see, I'm going to say it again. Les Spectres de la Maison Gothos. I don't know. I think maybe that was close. This is the French 227.
Nouvelle Série is new series.
New series. That's what I thought. Nouvelle series is new series. So, cool book. French 227. I don't have any visual aids of the interior. And I can't remember if it's black and white or not. I do think it's still in color. So, I told you this was a small set. I do not have all of them. I'll talk about the ones that I'm missing, or the one that I'm missing. But the next one is a doozy. This is the Australian Batman 227. This is the Tip Top, Superman Presents Tip Top Monthly, Comic Monthly, number 98. It's published by K.G. Murray, and it was published on July 1973. So this was 3 months, or 3 years after the American in 1970. And this is an extremely hard book to get.
Stefan says, I don't understand what you're saying, LOL.
At all? I thought I was saying it. Okay, Stefan, I'm going to say it again. Les Spectres de la Maison Gothos. Is that French for
Is that French?
the demon of Gothos Mansion? I thought that was French. Okay, you're going to have to tell me. We're going to have to talk so I can figure that out. Okay, so the Australian Batman is one of two of the most difficult foreign 227 editions to find. Now, There's reasons for that. I'll get to that in a second, but let me talk about the book first. This book, if you notice, has a very reddish tint. You know how the French was blue? This one's very red. Okay? I don't remember, is Daphne? Okay, Daphne's blue in the French. She's purple in the American. And in the Brazilian, she's pink.
He says, "Show it to me,"
Oh, okay. Well, I wrote it down.
while laughing at you.
Oh, well, I'll show it to him. I'll show it to him after. But yeah, so she's practically red in this. I guess that's a deep pink, but this is a very reddish tinted 227. I love it. I love the purple banner. Planet Comics, K.G. Murray, hard as hell to find. Now let me explain a little bit about that. When I wrote the first article on foreign editions, I came up with something I like to call the local indigenous bias. And what that is it's a bias that the locals in a country have towards their own indigenous output of comic books. Now, most of the time, if it's an original foreign comic in that country, then that's, you know, the first time it's come out, that's one thing. But when locals in, you know, in foreign collectors, not foreign as in us or people that collect like this style, but just collectors in their countries abroad, when there's an American book available and also a foreign or their local indigenous book available, usually what happens is they have a bias towards the American. They prefer the American. They don't like their local books. Now, what tends to happen in these countries is those local books are not loved, they're not liked, they're not bought. I'll give you an example. In French Canada, there'd be comic stores there. In the comic shops, you could buy the American books. The EH, the French-Canadian books, were on the stands and on the stands only, from my understanding of it. You couldn't go into a comic shop in Canada and buy EH books. They were bought off the stands in the more traditional distribution. My understanding of Australia was it was sort of the same thing. In a lot of the comic shops there, the American books were displayed prominently, and the local books were things that you bought off, you know, at a magazine stand, or you bought in a convenience store or something like that. And they were definitely not loved. These were in black and white, so, you know, that they have that going against them, but I kind of like artwork when it's in black and white. And I believe that in Australia, because they had a lot of access to American stuff, they really have a pretty severe bias towards their local indigenous stuff. Now, that's not true, and that's not the case for everyone. There's pretty well-known collectors, Daniel Best. There's another guy named Robert Thomas. I think Thomas is his last name. There is a hardcore cabal of Australian collectors to collect the Australian output, but for the majority, I think for every 10 Australian collectors, there's probably 8 or 9 that wouldn't think twice about throwing the Australian ones away or throwing them in the back of a closet or not giving a shit about them, where there might only be 2 that are hardcore and care about the local stuff. Now, I could be wrong, but that's my understanding as it stands today. So because of that, I think a lot of these tip-tops just weren't taken care of. And they just languished in collections and, you know, used for collages or projects. And, you know, a lot of the collectors, I hesitate to say majority because I don't know for sure, but a lot of those Australian collectors really preferred the American books in their collection. And so for that, it creates rarity. On top of the fact that I'm not exactly sure what K.G. Murray's print runs were on these local books, but I know on some of the other Australian publisher books, they could be very small. Now, this book, my buddy Tony helped me get this, and one of my Australian buddies helped me pull this out of Australia. But this was an extremely tough book to get out of Australia, and they're expensive. They can run high even in lower grades like this one is. But it's a low grade. I really don't care. I'm just happy to have it, and you know I love it in my set. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about other collectors that collect this set, and I'm going to hold up my Brazilian because I like it. I like it a lot. I think it's just a great representation of a foreign edition. Now, I said this set was kind of cool because a lot of early adopters of the foreign niche started building this. There's a couple collectors that have actually completed this set. I am missing a very big one. I am missing the Arabic. The Arabic was printed in Lebanon, and there are currently, there's actually a more recent printing of the Arabic. I don't even care which one I land. I don't care if I land the more recent printing of the Arabic or the older one from the late 70s. I don't even care, but it's really hard to find, and it's probably the coolest Batman227 out there, up there with the Brazilian, which I'm holding now. Now, Tony Pomilla, he's got a full set. He started building this set early on. There's also another guy named Ronnie. We don't see Ronnie around much in the niche anymore. We nicknamed him the Cheetah because he would just snatch books, and if he wanted it, he would beat you in any bid. He just would get it. He has a complete 227 set. There's also a collector named David Stuckey. He is building this set, and I believe he's got them all except for the French and the Australian. I am missing the Arabic. It's a small set, but it's an awesome set, and I hope you guys enjoyed it. There was a problem there with the cat. I'm sorry. We should have closed that stupid door so I didn't freak out about
Tell
it.
the internet the cat's still alive and well.
The cat is still alive, but I'm not sure for how much longer. Are there any other questions? Does
They'll be
anyone have
fine.
any other questions?
You're gonna show stuff on the what you were trying to pronounce?
Oh, well, it's kind of hard because it's so small. So as you know, I write the notes on the back here. I was trying to pronounce L.E. Spectre.
Okay.
It's right here.
I know, and it goes over to there.
That's the French pronunciation of the story, and I thought I pronounced it right.
Anthony says good stuff.
Thank you, Anthony. This is my buddy Anthony. I believe he is in Texas. So anyway, cool set. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I'm still working on the Star Wars set. It'll come soon. I gotta get, that's one that requires a huge amount of, I know a lot about it, but I'm just getting all my ducks in the row. I've got to get, I want to print out, what I want to do is actually take a photograph or print out from the CBR the same panel. My favorite panel in that set is when Darth Vader is raising a coffee cup. And so I want to show each book, each panel from each foreign edition when I get to that. What's up?
Your phone's at 10%.
Oh, okay.
And Anthony says San Antone.
San Antonio. Cool. Well, if you ever make your way to Santa Fe, come give me a visit. So that's it. Batman227 presentation. I hope you guys have fun today. We're going to go spend time with my parents, drink a few beers, and hang out. The balloon fiesta is going on in Albuquerque, so we'll be seeing balloons flying out throughout the air. And thank you for checking out my presentations. Batman227, classic Neil Adams bats from the Bronze Age. I'll see you guys later.
Anthony says later.